Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 4 team selection. I've got 2 free transfers, £1 million in the bank and about 15 players that I want to buy. If you're enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. We are on the road to 100,000 subscribers, but without further ado, let's jump into it. So for today's video, we're just going to jump straight into my Game Week 4 team selection because we've already looked at how I performed in Game Week 3 at the start of the week in my transfer plans video. But very briefly, I scored 56 points. It was enough for a small green arrow. And I know that the cliche saying at the moment is that rank doesn't matter. And that's because it doesn't. All you want to try and do is accumulate as many points as you possibly can at the start of the season and make sure that your team is well set up moving forward for some of the fixture swings that we have coming up. Before we actually take a look at my team, if you haven't yet seen yesterday's video, we did get the main man Chunks on the channel. That was an absolute banger of a video. I loved recording it. And also there's a lot of like behind the scenes content and photos over on my Instagram. And I will be doing a massive giveaway on my Instagram when we hit 100,000 subscribers. So as soon as that happens, I'll be doing a huge giveaway to more than one person. So do make sure you go over and follow my Instagram. There will be a link down below in the description and in the pinned comment as well. And like I said, as soon as we hit that, there will be a big giveaway over there. So make sure you've subscribed and make sure that you're following on Instagram. But jumping into the team, I say this every week, but I'm pretty happy with the team. I feel like it's set up quite well, and I'm still happy with the majority of selections that I made in Game Week 1, and also the transfers that I've made since then. I mean, we've been a little bit limited in how much we've actually done with our team, but I do again feel like there's not a massive amount that I need to do because I chose these players for a reason and we only have 3 game weeks worth of data. A lot of these players that I chose had good fixtures for a longer spell. So it does make it quite tricky to try and take these players out this early in the season. But we've got to use at least one transfer and I could see myself this week definitely using 2. And we'll discuss where that second one could be. This team is currently rated at 98% according to Fantasy Football Hub, which is the highest it's been for a while and predicted to get me 66.4 points in Game Week 4, which I may probably take. That seems like a reasonable amount. Let's start with the goalkeeper situation. I've had a bit of a stinker here. Let's be honest. You know what? I'm going to hold my hands up. I've had a bit of a stinker. Pickford was not a good pick. The fixtures were good. They looked good in pre-season. I thought they'd improve under Dyche. We've spoken about all the reasons that I picked him, but not been impressive at all. If I were in a wild card right now, Pickford would probably be like my 7th or 8th choice. So yes, if I had unlimited transfers, I wouldn't have Pickford. And you might say, well, Ross, you've got 2 free transfers and that your outfield players don't look too bad. And that's true. But we've got an international break between Game Weeks 4 and Game Weeks 5. And I feel like in an international break, anything can happen. And also, players could return from injury, which may impact my team as well. It's not just players getting injured over the international break. That is 2 weeks for a player to potentially return, which may impact the players that I've already got. So I feel like it is often very, very useful to come back from an international break with 2 free transfers. So whilst, yes, I probably do have a spare transfer this week in which I could take out Pickford, I would like to have 2 going into the international break or use 2 on my outfield players where the potential to gain points is quite high. And as I've always said, I find it very difficult to try and predict clean sheets. This is in real life. Like if let's say you don't even play FPL, go through let's do an action exercise and you can tell me how you do next week. Go through the Premier League games this week in Game Week 4 and try and predict which teams will get clean sheets. And I guarantee you get almost all of them wrong because it's so tricky to try and predict. And yes, Everton don't look great, but with the fixtures that they've got coming up, I would probably expect them to get 1, 2, 3 clean sheets before I maybe play a wild card in Game Week 9. So I'll leave it there on Pickford. I'm not happy with it. Again, a bit of a stinker. If you do have a spare transfer and you really do just want to get rid of him, I don't hate it at all. I think Flecken is one of the better options at the moment. I feel like you couldn't really go overly wrong with Ederson because he'll keep a lot of clean sheets, but maybe not as many save points. I think if I were to choose a goalkeeper at the moment, it might be Flecken. I just think Brentford are a good defence with good fixtures, and he feels like a keeper that will make a lot of saves. We saw that with Raya last season, and it looks like Flecken will continue to do so as well. So that's the goalkeeper situation. Let's hope Pickford can get something against Sheffield United. The back line I'm actually okay with, but there are obviously a couple of issues. Let's start with the players that aren't issues. Ben Chilwell, I think, will continue to be very, very strong for Chelsea. There are rumours of Chelsea trying to maybe switch back to a back 4 as opposed to a back 5, in which case Chilwell might be slightly more defensive. But I think regardless, with the fixtures, with Chilwell being on some set pieces and also looking very attacking, Chilwell's not an issue for me. And Udogie's not an issue as well. I wish I'd have played him in Game Week 3. Unfortunately, I had him on the bench. but he is a player that is very, very attacking. Spurs don't look terrible defensively, especially in comparison to what we've maybe seen in the last few seasons. Despite how attacking they've been, I do feel like they'll be okay at the back. And Udogie is essentially playing a very similar role to Chilwell, so I'm very happy to keep him with the fixtures coming up. And Estepinian is exactly the same. I would say Chilwell, Estepinian, and Udogie are three of the most attacking fullbacks at the moment. They're all playing that kind of left wing back, almost left wing role for their teams. The issue with Estepinian in comparison to Chilwell and Udogie is that Estepinian's fixtures coming up are really, really bad. Apart from Bournemouth in game week 6, they're really not good fixtures. I don't mind them from an attacking perspective. So if you've got a Matoma or you've got a Solly March and you want to hang on to them, I don't mind it. And yes, Estepinian is very, very attacking, but you do need the clean sheets as well. I don't think you can over-rely on attacking returns repeatedly. I think at some point, your defender needs to pick up some clean sheets. And I do worry slightly with the fixtures coming up. That being said, I'm not looking to sell him at the moment because I feel like there are other places that I want to use my transfers and other maybe slightly bigger issues in my team. But again, if you're in a position where you've got luxury transfers, I don't hate the idea of selling him just because, I can't see any clean sheets apart from maybe against Bournemouth. But even Bournemouth are a pretty attacking outfit under the new management. So, yeah, I don't mind selling Estepinian. It would allow you to get ahead of the curve. Listen, FPL is about taking risks, and he is very highly owned at the moment. If you bring in someone instead of Estepinian and they outscore him, all of a sudden you're laughing. Of course, it has the potential to backfire, but that is how you win FPL. That is how you win your mini leagues. You can't just be safe all season. So if you see this as an opportunity to maybe back against the herd, I don't dislike that. Then on the bench, I've got Saliba. Maybe not a real issue in my team, but in a similar way to Brighton, maybe not as bad, but Arsenal's fixtures coming up aren't great. So I see Saliba again as an opportunity to, a lot of people will have maybe an Arsenal defender, probably Saliba, maybe people that add Gabriel would move away, but I see that as a relatively highly owned player that, again, there may be better defenders to own over the coming weeks. I'm not sure if I need a defensive transfer when I look at the rest of my defense. So Saliba probably stays for now, and I'm okay having him in the team. He won't be in my starting 11 this week because at the moment I've got 2 Manchester United assets. And then the 5th defender is Botman. At the time of me recording this, I don't yet have an update. Unless Botman's out long term, I won't remove him. But even if he is out long term, I'm not going to remove him this week. I'll wait until after the international break. But I really do hope that Botman's fit because around game week 5, game week 6, Newcastle's fixtures really improve, and I can guarantee you almost everyone playing FPL will want to move towards Newcastle assets, and I already have one in place. Also, Botman and Udogie rotate really nicely with Estepinian and Saliba. So I'm looking at this and thinking, please Botman be fit because it will allow me to obviously rotate him in and be slightly ahead of the curve. So that's the defense. There are obviously Gusto could be good short term, but Reece James looks like he'll be back in I reckon about 5 to 6 weeks based on the latest news that we've heard. I think I'm recording this directly after the Chelsea game. If Colwill is fit, because apparently he came off with a knock, I can't yet confirm that. That's the issue when you record straight after a game. But if Colwill is fit, Colwell is, of course, a good option. I love Rico Henry. I think if I was looking for a cheaper defender, I like Rico Henry. And I also still think that the Man City defence is worth investing in. Probably Gvardiol would be the option that I would go for. But at the moment, I can't see myself using a defensive transfer. So let's move on to that 5-man midfield where it is most likely that I'll use at least 1 and potentially 2 transfers. So guys, moving on to the midfield, and this is probably where the biggest discussion needs to take place this week because a lot of us have a very similar midfield to me. Maybe you've got 3 or 4 assets from Manchester United and Arsenal. Maybe overall, if we look at the opening 3 game weeks, most of them have maybe been a little bit disappointing. Saka may be the least disappointing because he returned in 2 of the weeks, but in general, all 4 assets have been very disappointing. If you own Ødegaard, maybe a little bit disappointed too that he's not got more attacking returns. I think especially for Arsenal, when you consider the 3 fixtures that they had to open the season, I think maybe we expected slightly more. And Rashford and Fernandes taken up a lot of our budget, considering that they blanked in the opening 2. Yes, they returned in the 3rd game, but that was against Nottingham Forest, which on paper at home should have been a pretty good fixture. So I understand the desire to sell the 4, and it's not even necessarily that we think these 4 are bad assets. It's just that there are really good in-demand players that we want to bring in, and only so many midfield spots that we have. And I don't think anyone would sit here and say any of these 5 midfielders are a big issue. Well, not in my personal opinion anyway. I don't look at any of these 5 and say you desperately need to take them out. But I look at some of the options that I could bring in instead, and all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, I probably do want to make some midfield transfers. So I've discussed this to death this week, and last week maybe in a bit of detail as well, about if you were to sell out of the Manchester United and Arsenal assets in order, who is the biggest issue and who is the least of an issue. I'll start with Bruno Fernandes. I don't think Bruno Fernandes is an issue at all. And if I were to only keep one of these 4 assets, it would be Bruno Fernandes. Again, this is not a biased opinion. It's not me being blinded as a Manchester United fan. He has got exceptionally good data. He is very talismanic. He plays every minute. He's on penalties. He's on some set pieces too. His goal threat's not been terrible, but his assist threat has been through the roof. And I think once Højlund is back, which you would hope is from Game Week 5 onwards post-international break, I think it'll only make him a better asset. Rashford has switched out to the left, which again, I think makes Fernandes a slightly better asset. He looked slightly better in Game Week 3. I don't know if that was the absence of Mount or just because it was a slightly easier fixture on home against Nottingham Forest at home. I don't know what the reason for it was, but in general, I just don't see him as an issue. Like I said, for all of those reasons, for me, Bruno Fernandes will not be sold. So he's the one in my team that I'm very, very happy with. If I were to put another player alongside Bruno Fernandes, just because I want a piece of the Arsenal attacking pie, just because at the moment it looks like he probably is going to maintain penalties or at least share them with Ødegaard, which does add another route to points for him. He's on set pieces and we know he's very, very good at home. I think Bukayo Saka is probably going to stay in my team as well. I like the security of minutes. I like the possibility of penalties, or maybe you could say the likelihood of penalties from now on. The set pieces too. He feels very, very similar to Bruno Fernandes in that Saka has tons of routes to points and he's on the pitch for most of the time to allow him to get those points as well. So for me, if I were to only keep 2 of these assets, Fernandes and Saka are going to be staying. I think the other 2 is where I really need to think about this because I think most people would agree that maybe Martinelli's a slightly bigger issue than Rashford, just due to the fact that he's more of a minutes risk. There is definitely a possibility that at some point Trossard or Smith Rowe start on the left. Maybe it's not going to come anytime soon, but of course Arsenal are in the Champions League this season. Maybe Arteta prefers Martinelli in the Champions League. Maybe that's when we start to see rotation. Maybe not in Game Week 4, maybe not in Game Week 5, but I do think that longer term, if I'm thinking about who I want to hold on to in my team, I feel like Martinelli is the biggest rotation risk. And considering that I think all 4 of these assets are great, I don't have an issue with any of the data, I don't have an issue with the fixtures overly, I don't have an issue with any of them. When I'm trying to really pick the finer details of who I would like to remove, minutes is a big one. So for me at the moment, Martinelli's a slightly bigger issue than Rashford. So if I'm only going to sell one, it's going to be Martinelli. But the issue is, do I sell 2? And this is what I would love to know down below in the comments, because I don't think many people would turn their nose up at me removing Martinelli. Although I guess I should comment, Manchester United have a lot of defensive injuries, and this is a home fixture. So maybe this isn't the week to remove Martinelli. I mean, without Varane, without Shaw, without Malacia, our back line is probably going to be Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Martinez, Dalot. I mean, it's not a great defense at all. So maybe this isn't the week to remove Martinelli. But for me, I'm thinking longer term. I'm thinking across the set amount of game weeks that I will have someone else. I prefer the other options. So the next question is, do we remove Rashford as well? Let's say we do Martinelli to one of the in-demand midfielders. Do you also make the transfer to remove Rashford as well? Because again, we're not saying that Rashford's a bad option. Well, I'm not him anyway, especially on the left. I think Rashford is much, much stronger on the left, and I think he will get attacking returns, and I don't mind the fixtures for United. But is there a better option? Because I have the transfer to use. So when we look at the transfer options for me, we discussed this already, and it's fairly obvious. It's Foden, Sterling, Maddison. I've been really trying to think about this in a lot of detail and decide who I want to bring in. And I should note at this point, just to timestamp this, I'm recording this at 10:15 on Wednesday evening UK time. So that is just after the Chelsea game. I did wait around to see if there was any news cropping up. Sterling was not in the squad for the Chelsea game, the domestic cup. Now, most people are saying that was probably just a rest. And unless we get an update, he probably was just rested. But if by the time you're watching this, there's news come out that he's injured or he's got a niggle, I do apologise. It shouldn't massively influence this video. It doesn't really change a lot, other than the fact that, of course, I wouldn't consider Sterling. But as things stand, with the information that I have available to me, Foden, Sterling, Maddison, I've got the same opinion as I had during my Game Week preview video earlier in the week. I think Maddison is, for me, the best option. I just think he's got good minutes. He's central to everything Spurs are doing. Multiple routes to points. Could still be on penalties. And the fixtures over the next 6 to 8 game weeks are absolutely brilliant. Sterling is in second because I think arguably he's got the better fixtures over the next 4 to 5 weeks. I think he's got the greatest goal threat of the 3. And he's a player in form. And I know people laugh at this word form and what do we actually mean by form. But he is a player that when he goes on a hot streak, he kind of stays on that hot streak for a little bit. And you want to jump on him for that hot streak. He can go very hot and he can go very cold as well. So I feel like Sterling is a player that you want to jump on when the fixtures are good. and also when he's playing well. And this is exactly what we've got with Raheem Sterling right now. So Sterling is probably only second. The only reason he's in second and not first is if you look at the data across the first three, which some people don't care about too much, he's not actually had many clear-cut chances, and he's not created many clear-cut chances either. So yes, he's got some attacking returns, and yes, he's looked very good, but he's not necessarily getting the amount of clear-cut chances that Maddison is. And then in the third is Foden. And this is almost what I said with Martinelli, that I don't think there's much to separate Foden, Sterling, Maddison. I think they'll have very similar data across the season and probably very similar output. But when I'm trying to decide who I want to bring in, if I think one of them is a minutes risk, and that is really one of the only things that's separating them, why would I pick the minutes risk? It just makes no sense for me when I think all three are so close to each other. Now, that isn't to say that I won't go for Foden, because I do absolutely love him and I could be convinced. The other thing about him just being a minutes risk, that's just Man City in general. But also, Spurs and Chelsea are not in Europe this season. So once from Game Week 5, Game Week 6 onwards, when the European football kicks in, Sterling and Maddison will not be an increased rotation risk, whereas Foden, of course, could potentially be so. So I think for all of those reasons, at the moment, it's Maddison, Sterling, Foden. And then if we jump over to Hub and look at their AI recommended transfers, so you can get this, there will be links in the description to Fantasy Football Hub if you want to check it out. They are still doing, at the moment, at the time we're recording, their 50% off deal, so do check it out. They are recommending a double transfer of Saliba to Gvardiol and Martinelli to Foden. So they're saying, yep, sell Martinelli, definitely. Of the midfielders to sell, Martinelli is the one to sell. And if you're going to bring in a midfielder, they actually prefer Foden. The projected point says Foden at the top. And maybe sell Saliba for a Man City defender, because longer term, more chance for clean sheet, better fixtures, maybe less expected minutes, but we think maybe Gvardiol might start enough games to still justify the move. So I don't dislike that double move, but as I said, I just think the international break, so many things that can happen, that making a defensive transfer when I'm happy with my starting back three just feels a little bit unnecessary, when I think I would have more value in holding the transfers and having two going into Game Week 5. So if we just go back to my team, at the moment, the plan, and again, I'm recording this on Wednesday night and the deadline won't be until Friday evening. At the moment, the plan is Martinelli to Maddison. That could be Sterling or Foden as well. Then the other thing I need to think about, and what I would love for your opinion down below in the comments, is do I then do Rashford to one of the other two that I don't get? So let's say I do Martinelli to Maddison. Do I then do Rashford to one of Foden or Sterling? Because do I think Foden and Sterling will outscore Rashford over the next 5 or 6 weeks? Probably. Not definitely, but probably with the fixtures that they've got, you would hope that they would. And if that's the case, and this is a free transfer, do you maybe just take the risk? Especially this week, Rashford against Arsenal away, or like a Foden against Fulham at home. It's very, very tempting. I maybe need to let go of my Manchester United bias, but I do really like Marcus Rashford on the left. We'll leave the midfield there. Let's move on to the forward two and then look ahead to some future weeks as well. So moving on to the forwards, and I'm pretty happy with the forward situation at the moment. There are a few things that I want to keep in mind. So Erling Haaland is going to be my captain this week. Yes, he's been maybe slightly underwhelming in comparison to what we saw at points last season, but you have to remember that was an exceptional season last season. And even if there is a drop-off this season, which we discussed in the Chunks video yesterday, Chunks is predicting that there might be a bit of a drop-off for Haaland this season, and I don't necessarily disagree. I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe get 5, 6, 7 goals less than last season, but that would still be an exceptional season. And most weeks it would still make him an excellent captaincy shout. Maybe we just have to temper our expectations slightly that he's not going to be getting you a hat-trick every week. But I still feel like Haaland against Fulham at home, I would say that alongside Luton, Fulham are the worst team in the league at the moment, especially defensively. So for me, maybe Everton in there. Maybe the 3 defences to target, and I say that with Pickford in goal, are probably Everton, Fulham, and Luton. I think Fulham are so poor at the moment, and that is at the Etihad as well. My prediction is 4 or 5 goals for City this week. So Haaland is definitely going to be a captain, and it's one of the reasons I want Foden as well. Then I've got Nicholas Jackson. Now, I think Jackson is absolutely fine. I was actually quite impressed with him overall in Game Week 3. He does feel like the kind of player that is going to get a lot of chances and miss a lot of them as well. You just hope that he puts enough away to warrant the transfer that we used on him. And I brought him in for João Pedro. João Pedro looks like a massive issue at the moment. Maybe we'll discuss João Pedro in the deadline decisions video. But yeah, I think I'm happy with the Jackson transfer. And if I was to make it again this week, I would probably still lean towards Jackson. One thing that I just want to keep in mind is what I might want for the future. Right? So at the moment, I'm happy with Haaland and Jackson. And I've got 1 million in the bank. And I'm just looking ahead to maybe, let's say, because at the moment, a Game Week 9 wildcard looks quite possible for a lot of people, because there's an international break between Game Week 8 and 9, and there's a big fixture swing in Game Week 9 for a lot of teams. So I think a lot of people are eyeing up maybe a wildcard in Game Week 9. But if it's not in Game Week 9, I don't really see another week that I would want to use it before Game Week 19. So I'm looking at either 9 or 19. If it's 19, then I need to start thinking about my structure and stuff moving forward, because I might not be playing my wildcard for another 15 game weeks. So what I'm thinking about is, I think around game week 8, game week 9, I'm going to want one of, if not both, Watkins and Jesus. If Jesus is still fit, I think he's going to be a brilliant option. And Ollie Watkins I want in my team as well. And I'm also looking at Archer as well. I think could be a really decent option to rotate into your front line, into your attackers, if he starts to do well at Sheffield United. We've seen in the past with the likes of Brewster, maybe just because you've got a playing 4.5 doesn't make them great. But I am interested to see how he does there. So maybe if I have a free transfer at some point, Mabama to Archer might be worthwhile. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is, can I, around game week 7, game week 8, as we're moving towards those game weeks, if I don't think I'm going to play the wildcard in game week 9, can I start to free up some funds to allow me to go from Jackson to someone like an Ollie Watkins? Because at the moment, yeah, I've got the 1 million in the bank, but what I don't want to do is tie up my funds in loads of specific players where it then becomes tricky to upgrade that second forward spot. So these are just some of the things that I'm thinking about. But at the moment, I'm happy with the front line. And generally, I'm happy with the team. If I only had one free transfer this week, I'd still be tempted to roll because, as I said, Manchester United look really, really, really weak at the back with the injuries that we've got, and it's at the Emirates as well. So I'm looking at this and thinking Martinelli could be feasting, especially if Gabriel Jesus starts. But because I've got 2 free transfers and I'm happy with everything else in my team, and like, I know Pickford's not great, and I know I might have a Botman injury, but these aren't high upside transfers that I can make. I'm looking at Martinelli and saying Martinelli's got to go for me. I think that's the only reasonable possible transfer. And at the moment, like I said, Maddison, Sterling, Foden. I would love to know down below as well. Please feel free to rank those 3. So just have Foden, Sterling, Maddison, rank them, and feel free to provide some rationale as well. So that's my team for game week 4. Of course, there will be a deadline decisions video and a deadline stream. But the final thing I want to look at in today's video is just what my team looks like going into game week 5 and game week 6 post-international break, to look at if I really do need 2 transfers after the international break. So guys, for this final section, as I said, I just thought we'd look ahead towards sort of game week 5, game week 6, where we might start to need using the transfers. And also, will we need 2 free transfers post-international break? Or do our teams look really good set up again? Now, the one thing that I would note here is that it's not just does your team currently look good for game week 5. As I said, there is an international break. And if you are new to FPL, or maybe you've forgotten, things crop up in the international break. Whether that be little knocks and niggles that we don't know if they'll be back, serious long-term injuries. And also, a lot of the time, players like travel back late, and there are rumours going around that they aren't quite fit to play in the next game in game week 5. So all of these things that can happen might mean that your team looks perfect in game week 5 now, but post-international break, it looks terrible. So I do always feel like it's useful to have 2 free transfers post-international break, but maybe slightly overrated because often you won't have any issues. But what I've done is I've just plugged in. So I'm on the My Team tool over at Fantasy Football Hub. There will be a link in the description if you want to check it out. I think the team looks great for game week 4, but let's say that I do the Martinelli to Maddison move. I've put Maddison in there. Again, it could be Sterling, could be Foden. Let's see where and I will make that on the deadline stream. I'll make the decision on the deadline stream. Maybe we'll spin the wheel and decide on it, but I'll make that last minute based on all of the information that I have available. At the moment, let's say that I don't do Rashford to one of Sterling or Foden. And let's say Maddison's the only one that comes in, and then I decide a little bit later on that. Remember, a 2-week break. And then this is the position that we are going into game week 5. So obviously Pickford comes out in game week 5. It's one of the reasons that we actually chose Turner. Turner comes in. Udoggy's got Sheffield United at home. So he would probably come in for Estepinian, I think, because I have 2 Manchester United assets. Let's back Manchester United to do the job against Brighton. And then probably the rest of the team would stay the same. So that's a game week rating of 94%. Without a single transfer, the team's in a really good place. So do I need 2 transfers at the moment post-international break? No. And then I think, well, I will have 1 free transfer regardless. If I do get an injury, I've got a free transfer to use it on. So then when I start looking at it this way, I'm like, hang on a second. I've basically got an extra free transfer to use. I'm unlikely to need it in game week 5 unless I do have quite a few issues crop up. Maybe I get aggressive and make the transfer in game week 4. But again, what if I bring in Foden or Sterling and then they get injured in the international break and then I regret it and I think, oh, I would have just rather save it for post-game week 5. So these are all the things that I'm thinking about. Maybe it is worth just being aggressive at this stage of the season and really trying to make your team as good as possible in the short term. Game week 5, I don't know what move I would make, but I would have 2 free transfers in game week 5. I just wanted to show you, going into game week 6, this is where the team starts to look a little bit trickier at points. But I mean, you've got Pickford coming back in. Estepinian comes back in against Bournemouth. Udoggy would come out, and then Botman's got Sheffield United. So if you're wondering why I chose... So at the start of the season, I explained this on my channel, but if you are new, I chose Udoggy and Botman because I had Saliba and I had Estepinian. Udogie rotates in really nicely with Estepinian, and Botman rotates really nicely in with Saliba, to the point that in most weeks you've got a really, really nice back three. So again, I look at this team, get into game week 6, a really decent back line. I've got Jackson and Haaland. My midfield 5 is okay. Obviously, Saka and Maddison are playing against each other, but that does happen in FPL. You can't necessarily avoid that. So again, I look at my team now, and I would have had like 3 or 4 free transfers post-international break now, and still there's not a lot to do. So all of that to say, I guess the team's looking really well set up. I'm happy with where I am currently. I'm happy with my start to the season. I am happy using 1 free transfer on Marseille to Maddison. I just need to decide, do I want to use that second one? Because it feels like my team's so well set up that even with a couple of injuries, I could probably still deal with it without taking a hit, because I don't necessarily have many other places that I want to use my transfer. So I would love to know down below what you think of my team. What would you personally do? Like I said, give me your opinion on Sterling, Foden, Maddison, and also let me know what your dilemmas are for Game Week 4. And of course, there will be a deadline decisions video later today at the time of you watching this, and also a deadline stream on Friday as well. So do check out those 2 pieces of content. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 4 team selection. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please do smash the like button. Let's aim for 3,000 likes on today's video, and make sure to subscribe as well. We are less than 5,000 subscribers away from 100,000. I would absolutely love to hit that by the end of September. Let's set that as the goal, but if you could help me get there a little bit sooner, I would really appreciate it. And as I said at the start of the video, when we hit 100,000 subscribers, there is going to be a massive giveaway over on Instagram. And I actually don't have that many follows over there at the moment. All you have to do is follow me on Instagram, and also you'll have to like a post at the time as well, and you'll have a very, very good chance of winning the prize that we do for that giveaway. And if you have any opinions on what the prize should be, I've got something in mind, but if you have an opinion on what you would like it to be, please do let me know down below. But make sure to subscribe, make sure to follow on Instagram, and until next time, thank you for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.